These are allegations of abuse of power, obstruction, and corruption. That's why today I am directing our House committee to open a formal impeachment inquiry into President Joe Biden.
Madam Speaker, I rise today to urge House Republicans to investigate one of the modern American scandals and political cons. Now, why did the Saudi government give Jared Kushner $2 billion just months after he left the Trump White House? As engaged in business dealings that may have crossed the ethical line, and I agree, yet they refuse to act. Is this the same party that's obsessed with President Biden's family?
Jared Kushner refuses to comply. He's not answering any of the Democrats' requests. And Chairman Comer, he said he agrees with us that Kushner crossed a line of ethics. And if that's true, then he should go ahead and render a subpoena so Kushner will comply with our request so we can get to the bottom of this massive conflict of interest, likely Foreign Emoluments Clause violation, and crime against the public interest.
I will admit, I've missed my Jamie Raskin fix, especially when the topic involves Jared Kushner. Republicans shamelessly scream about Hunter Biden while playing woefully ignorant over the very much documented wealth that Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, came into.
What's going on with the Trump administration, and I think Jamie Raskin is onto this as well, the congressman from Maryland who's on the committee, saying, why aren't we investigating the Trump accounting firms? Or why don't you look into things like Jared Kushner getting $2 billion directly from the Saudis after former President Trump bragged about protecting the Saudi prince? We just don't know, but I think this is a thin veil for the fact that, after all this investigation and talk about Hunter Biden, the committee's come up with zero, with nothing. And they got the laptop, they got this, that, nothing.
Kellyanne, is that a fair question about Jared Kushner?
It just got there. Jared, of course, is the only person I think who's benefited in the billions with a B from the Trump presidency, that's for sure.
Jamie Raskin continues to lead the charge on the efforts of someone enriching themselves who was actually in office, by the way. Again, for those cocooned off in the Fox News show, Hunter Biden has never been in office. But details, schmeetails, right?
Who oversaw Middle East policy for his father-in-law, has enriched himself and his family in what is clearly an enormous grift and likely serious conflict of interest crimes. So let's review. First, Jared Kushner conned his way to a cushy White House job with no clear job description and no experience. Then he took it upon himself to prioritize pushing out the U.S. Secretary of State so he could cozy up to the Saudi government. Now, once he was close enough to the Saudis, we have records of a $110 billion arms deal between the U.S. and Saudi Arabia that was inflated at the direction of Jared Kushner.
Anyway, while on MSNBC this weekend, Raskin discussed dealings by Jared Kushner merely a day after his father-in-law left office, where he enriched himself in the amount of billions from the Saudis.
I got to ask you about Jared Kushner. I mean, you have asked Comer to subpoena Jared Kushner's investment firm over its ties to the Saudi Arabian government, to the Qatari government, United Arab Emirates as well. Can you explain why you are concerned? What have you seen that makes you worried about this, that you want to have subpoenaed?
Jared Kushner created a company the day after the Trump administration ended and proceeded to collect billions of dollars, more than $2 billion from the Saudi government for investment there, despite the fact that the sovereign investment funds investment advisors recommended against it. They were overruled by the homicidal crown prince himself, Mohammed bin Salman, who said he wanted to give that money to Jared Kushner in addition to a $25 million a year management fee. There's been very little of that money invested. The whole thing smells like a huge payback, a payoff essentially for everything that Kushner did for Mohammed bin Salman and the Saudis when he was running Middle East foreign policy there. And remember, he covered up for bin Salman's brutal dismemberment and assassination of Jamal Khashoggi, his drawing and quartering. He tilted towards Saudi Arabia in the Yemen war when there were just terrible atrocities taking place against the Yemen population. And in fact, Kushner had pushed for Saudi Arabia to be the first destination of Donald Trump in his foreign travel. So he got this huge payback. We've been trying to get documents showing what exactly they were doing for each other, but Jared Kushner refuses to comply. He's not answering any of the Democrats' requests. And Chairman Comer has said he agrees with us that Kushner crossed a line of ethics. And if that's true, then he should go ahead and render a subpoena so Kushner will comply with our request so we can get to the bottom of this massive conflict of interest, likely Foreign Emoluments Clause violation, and crime against the public interest. And our foreign policy has been irrevocably damaged by what Jared Kushner did with Saudi Arabia and the other Gulf monarchies, and we want to get to the bottom of it.
Meanwhile, Republicans are still trying to convince themselves that they have sufficient evidence to impeach Biden. And they're going on CNN and presenting this well-documented whatever that is
astounding. You would be shocked. You would blush, Caitlin, if you'd seen what I had seen.
You've said this before, and we spoke with you after you went to the Treasury Department and looked at those reports. But I mean, you, as a member of Congress, do have access to those reports. You went and saw them yourself. So I think a lot of people ask, you've been home for 6 weeks. There's been no new evidence that's been uncovered or brought forward. So what is the basis now for having?
Well, there are more people to subpoena, whether that's Hunter Biden, whether that's the bookkeeper, whether that's getting Shokin in to testify. There are a lot of witnesses out there that saw things that were part of meetings that Joe Biden was a part of, that were part of the transactions, that were potentially part of the bribery scheme. I mean, all that evidence the American people should be able to have and see. The American people can't.
None of it has risen to that.
Well, the American people can't see the suspicious activity reports. Those are confidential documents. So any piece of evidence, right or wrong, I want the American people to see all of it, whether it
Raskin followed up his MSNBC interview by releasing an article fact-checking all the claims from Republican majority on the committee in their attempt to build a case for impeachment against President Biden, debunking those alleged facts that Republicans claim the dog ate.
I'm not going to disclose that new name because that really changes things, because what we assumed was this was just about the president's son and two brothers. But now there's a new name that's emerged. So, and they are a Biden. So we've got a problem here with respect to trying to determine what exactly this family was doing to receive these transactions from China.
This is important.
And I think every American should be concerned about that. This is an issue of national security.
Yeah, let's see where it goes, okay? It's been 5 years, and what do we have for it? 5 years, long time to be investigating.
Such as none of the bank records that Comer has released shows any payments to President Biden. None of the SRAs the committee reviewed alleges or even suggests any potential misconduct by President Biden, nor do the SRAs show any involvement by President Biden in Hunter Biden's financial or business relationships. None of the witness accounts provided to the committee have shown any evidence of wrongdoing by the president. Former business associates of Hunter Biden have been interviewed by the committee, explicitly stating that they have no reason to believe President Biden had any involvement in Hunter Biden's business deals.
On that call,
Devin Archer either matters or he doesn't. And it was billed as bombshell testimony. I'm here to tell you why it wasn't a bombshell. So again, he said, not aware of any wrongdoing by the president. That 1023 form that Republicans like Jim Comer and everyone love to wave around. He says it wasn't any evidence of wrongdoing on the part of President Biden, that it wasn't evidence of a bribe. He knows nothing of the, quote, $5 million that the Burisma board allegedly gave to Joe Biden. He also talked about what happened with Viktor Shokin, the Ukrainian prosecutor being fired by Joe Biden and the rest of the international community. He said that Viktor Shokin was good for Burisma, that he wasn't investigating corruption there. Every piece of evidence, so-called evidence, that the Republicans have has utterly fallen apart, which is why Chuck Grassley and Ron Johnson have admitted on our air multiple times that they don't, quote, have it yet.
Time and time again, Raskin has used his time on air and on the House floor to obliterate this sheer waste of time that even fellow Republicans are getting sick of, by the way. I mean, just listen to what Ken Buck said about impeachment cheerleader Marjorie Taylor Greene.
If you want to understand just how ridiculous and cynical this impeachment attempt is, let me introduce you to Republican Congressman Ken Buck of Colorado.
So George, when I was teaching law school, I learned and taught certain constitutional principles. When Marjorie Taylor Greene was teaching CrossFit, she learned a whole different set of values, evidently.
The time for impeachment is the time when there's evidence linking President Biden, if there's evidence linking President Biden to a high crime or misdemeanor. That doesn't exist right now, and it isn't really something that we can say, well, in February we're going to do this. It's based on the facts. You go where the facts take you.
It's ridiculous. It's a waste of time. And Americans don't care.
And the American people deserve answers, and I urge my colleagues across the aisle to answer all our calls and subpoena Jared Kushner's company once and for all. Thank you, and I yield back.
Hey, Meidas Mighty. Love this report? Continue the conversation by following us on Instagram @MeidasTouch to keep up with the most important news of the day. What are you waiting for? Follow us now.